Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. You can prop swap the NFL draft odds. First overall pick, Trayvon Walker is the favorite. Aiden Hutchinson is a 2-1. Evan Neal, 25-1. The number 2 overall pick, Hutchinson is the favorite there. Kayvon Thibodeau is next. Trayvon Walker is a far third choice. Malik Willis is 18-1. Sauce Gardner to be the second overall pick. He is 22-1. He is 4-1, Sauce Gardner, to be the third overall pick, with Derek Stingley, the favorite. Geoff Mosher, a cornerback, could be going number 3 overall if you believe the Vegas odds. Stingley and Sauce Gardner, they're the favorites to be the third overall pick, and that might put a wrench in some of the Eagles' plans, I would guess.
Well, I mean, it would put a wrench in a lot of plans, a lot of teams' plans. You know, the Eagles are at 15. They would love to have one of those two guys, I would say, slip, into 7, 8, 9 for them to consider a move up in which you wouldn't have to just, really start giving up a lot of bounty. But all right, look, I've been having this conversation with Adam. This draft will challenge a lot of what I think I know about football schemes, coaches, and philosophies, right?
Why is that?
Because you're saying that the two corners, one of the two corners, are the favorites to go number 3 overall to Houston, correct?
Do they have the third pick? Yes.
Yeah. So what do we know about Houston? We know two things. Their head coach is Lovie Smith. And
We're insinuating that these teams know what they're doing sometimes.
That's a great point, especially Houston. I shouldn't be.
Yeah, don't be so hard on yourself, brother.
But here's what I can't get past with that.
Okay.
Is that Lovie Smith is the head coach, and Nick Caserio comes from New England. He's the GM, right? And what we know about Lovie Smith throughout his entire coaching career is that he's as pure Tampa 2 style defense as it gets. And most Tampa 2 teams do not put a lot of high investment in cornerbacks, because you've got 2 safeties back there. They like the physical guys, height, length, which Ahmad Gardner and Stingley offer. But, guys like Peanut Tillman, I'm trying to go through the Tampa Bay Bucks when they won it, with Simeon Rice and Warren Sapp up front. That's where they
had Rondé Barber.
The 3 technique, right? They had Rondé Barber, but he was a nickel cornerback. He was a slot corner. Their outside corners were Dexter
Jackson.
I can't remember the last name. But the point is, those style of teams don't normally use the number 3 overall pick on a cornerback, right? And then Nick Caserio comes from New England, which puts a lot of emphasis on secondary players. Nobody does it more than Belichick, but they actually are really good at taking day 2 and day 3 corners. Your Malcolm Butlers of the world, your Deron Harmons, who else have they turned into? There's a million corners that turned into star players. They don't normally invest first-round picks in cornerback. So, and plus, the Texans need so much help in pretty much everywhere around. I agree with you. That's a best player available type pick if they take Sauce Gardner there.
I mean, Steve Nelson might be the best corner they have right now.
I get that. I totally get that. But again, Tampa 2 teams are pretty happy to just have some tall, physical, and Steve Nelson is physical. They don't. That's not where they put most of their stock. They need, because you play 2 safeties deep, right? You need and because your linebackers tend to be smaller in the Tampa 2, like the Urlachers and the Lance Briggs, right? You need that big, strong defensive line. That's why the Warren Sapps and the Booger McFarlands and other guys, Robert Freeney from Indianapolis with Robert Mathis, right? Those guys were speed off the edge guys. Those are when I look at Houston, I think they're ripe for a Trayvon Walker or a Kayvon Thibodeau, although it sounds like Thibodeau might slip a little bit. But I think they're ripe for a defensive lineman, because that's the benchmark to what they do defensively. That is where it all begins. But again, I'm also the biggest advocate in the world for best player available. So I'd be a hypocrite to say it's a bad pick on their part.
Yeah, I mean, like it's funny because I'm looking at these odds, and Stingley's the favorite 3-1. Ahmad Gardner's next 4-1. Then there's a drop off. I mean, Trayvon Walker. Now he might not be there because he might be the number 1 overall pick. But even the next couple of picks, there's a pretty big drop between Stingley and Gardner, and then you go down to Evan Neal 6-1, Thibodeau 7-1, Aiden Hutchinson who's probably not going to be there. So it seems pretty locked in that Houston is going to take a corner if you believe those odds anyway.
Well, I've been surprised before, Michael, but let's revisit this conversation after the draft, and we'll see. We'll see if Houston actually took a cornerback that high.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely and I mentioned this because obviously the Eagles we think could be in play, and that would mean one guy would be off the board very early, which could really this happened to them last year where they liked 2 of the corners. Went right before them at 8 and 9. Surtain was the one went to Denver, and
right.
The guy went.
J.C. Horn.
J.C. Horn went to Carolina. So they may have liked a corner going in, and that kind of blew up their day.
It very well might have. So I think this draft is so unpredictable. I mean, when you're this close and you're not exactly sure who the number 1 overall pick is going to be. And that could also change the dynamic of who the number 2 pick is going to be based on who's number 1. I think that tells you that this should be a pretty unpredictable and potentially exciting draft.
Yeah, I think you're right. The top of the draft where, Hutchinson's not even the favorite anymore to be the number 1 pick. He has now been surpassed by Walker. So we'll take that for what it's worth. But you're getting to the last stages here, and you've got a flip-flop on who the presumed favorite is to be drafted number 1. And quite frankly, Jeff, we don't know who's going to go number 2.
No, we really don't know. I mean, could Sauce go number 2? I could see that. I mean, he's from Detroit. So not that the Lions are going to pick a guy just because he's from Detroit.
Well, and Hutchinson went to Michigan.
Right, and
so
Hutchinson went to Michigan.
You got that factor.
They've got
there
2
well.
things going on there. Yeah, when you think about what Dan Campbell said he wanted to do there, it was establish a culture of devouring kneecaps and pummeling people, and so that makes you tend to think trenches. And they did draft Penei Sewell last year. I don't know how they feel about Taylor Decker and Sewell, if they'd still rather have another offensive tackle or if they'd rather go pass rusher there. To me, it's fantastic. It's a great case study, and we'll talk about it after it happens. But Kayvon Thibodeau would be, let's say Hutchinson goes first or Trayvon Walker goes first. Kayvon Thibodeau is there, and he is a defensive end who is at one point was considered the best player in the draft and potential number 1 pick. But there's some question on sort of his effort all the time, love for football, like the type of stuff that you would think that would make Dan Campbell maybe roll his eyes a little bit. He's a talented player, but I've spoken to several teams that just say that, there's an arrogance about him in the interview that makes you wonder if he's a coachable kid, right? So, Dan Campbell wants guys who are going to run through the wall for him. So it makes you, if he doesn't go Thibodeau to the Lions at 2, well, where's his spot going to be?
Talk with Geoff Mosher. InsideTheBirds.com did their annual mock draft with Adam, Andrew, and Jeff. And in that 3rd spot, you took Trayvon Walker because Adam went with Hutchinson 1 and Andrew went with Thibodeau 2. So Houston would be doing backflips in that situation, wouldn't they?
I would think so. I mean, they could have Trayvon Walker or they could have still Sauce Gardner. So, I mean, they're sitting in the bird cat seat or whatever, bird dogs or whatever they call that seat that you want to be sitting in. They're in a great position because they have 2 first-round picks. They're both high, and there's really not a position that they would probably not pick a player at.
Yes. And then you got the Jets taking Gardner. That was Adam. The Giants would be interesting because Andrew's got him going with an offensive lineman with Ikuano. I think the Giants, obviously their offensive line has been a disaster for them for years. So this seems like whoever they take, Evan Neal, would be a safe pick for them finally, that they need to do something to start taking care of their skill players.
Yeah, but, that's where you get into, well, what happens if Thibodeau is still available there because they need pass rushers? What happens if
Well, that's why I like this conversation because it's all the things
there.
that, it's like all the peeling of the onion of as soon as something, and it's so unpredictable this draft, as soon as something doesn't go your way, how does that change all the dominoes behind you?
Well, I know that in several conversations people are having, myself included, as opposed to other years, it's a big guessing game. The Eagles are sitting there at 15, and they probably got certain guys in mind. And in the past, they could probably say, if we want that guy, we definitely have to make a call about moving up, see what it's going to cost us, or we can already tell now that where we're sitting, we may want to move down. So, I think where the Eagles are, if you were to talk to Howie Roseman to shoot him up with Truserum right now, he'd probably say, I really can't. I can discuss potential move ups and move downs, but until I see how the top 7 or 8 even shake out, I can't even tell you if I'm more likely to move up, down, or just stand pat.
Okay, so on that, let me, and I'll go off of what you guys did over at Inside the Birds, and obviously that's not the gospel in this situation, but I think Stingley, you guys have going in the 11 spot. Now, is there a player? Yeah, Stingley goes to Washington with Andrew picking for them. If Stingley's there at 11, do they call Washington and then try to move? Like, what's the threshold of the player they want and where he falls to where Howie says, I'll move to that spot? How high up is it?
Right. That's a good question. So one thing that I feel just in conversations with people, who know the Eagles and are trying to get a feel for the league. One person I spoke to yesterday said he does not sense that Howie's looking to really, hit the big home run here, like go from 15 to 5, right, to get Ahmad Gardner or 4 or anything like that. And he's going to package 15 and 18 or 15 in a second rounder. But the smaller move, like you're suggesting here, going from 15 to 11, which is only really moving up 3 or 4 spots, and then that probably costs you like a third rounder of some sort. That's a little bit more realistic. And so that's where Howie has to kind of decide, do I want to move up and give that up to get Stingley? Or at 15, would I be happy with Trent McDuffie, who is a very good cornerback, a cornerback that a lot of teams that pretty much checks off every single box except for the fact that he's got short arms. And teams that lean heavily on analytics don't like short-armed cornerbacks. But the Eagles make concessions at times. I mean, certainly Landon Dickerson is an example of making a concession on medical history for the sake of really good talent, right? So that's where Howie would have to decide, do I really want to make that aggressive move to go up a few spots for Stingley, or can I be happy with Trent McDuffie, who might be just as good in the long run, but has a little bit of a limitation here that I don't have to worry about with Stingley.
Right, and I guess on the injury front too, I mean, that's one of those things where I guess you're told by the doctors, like, hey, this guy's undraftable. You don't make that determination.
You definitely follow your medical advice there. That's why they didn't take DK Metcalf.
Correct, right. I was going to say, so you don't you don't go rogue and say, hey, the doctors are telling me red flag. No, but I'm taking him anyway.
Well, I mean, you certainly could, but you don't. You shouldn't, I should say. You also shouldn't, pick a player because your owner was rooting for him, but that happens too. So what are you going to do?
Okay, so same situation. Like Derek Stingley's there. Like, I don't know, in your mind, how many of these guys get to a certain point where they, like Jordan Davis, is he a guy they trade up for?
It's a tough. I don't think so. I mean, I think that they like him.
Like, which guys do they sit and wait?
Like him.
Which guys do they sit and wait and just hope? Hey, I'll take Davis as he's 15, but I'm not trading up to get him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I don't think they would trade up for Jordan Davis. I think they possibly would for Derek Stingley if it was just a couple of spots that we're talking about.
Yep.
But when you have 2 picks, Mike, and you have as many holes, I think that they're just hoping some good talent. And I'm not just hoping. I mean, I know that they expect that there'll be some good talent there. Now, in our mock draft, we had Garrett Wilson falling to the Eagles at 15. In retrospect, I think that that's not going to happen. But if it does, the way our board shook out, I think they'd be perfectly fine to sit there at 15 and take Garrett Wilson. A lot of teams I've spoken to have him as a top 10 talent and maybe the second best receiver behind Jamison Williams.
Yeah.
Jamison Williams. So, I mean, that's an example of what you're talking about.
Because we touched on this a little yesterday, but Andrew has Jamison Williams going 8, and obviously there's been some murmurs that that's the guy that the Eagles are hoping to get at 15. But we had discussed a bit that, this might have been after you got off the air yesterday, that the Eagles may likely have the pick of the litter of which receiver they want. Now, in your mock draft, the only receiver off the board is Jamison Williams. So under your thought process, Garrett Wilson trumps Drake London, Treylon Burks, Chris Olave, so George Pickens. So if they have the pick of the litter, you think Wilson would be their guy? Are you going off of fit on this mock draft or what you're hearing?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of both. Fit, yes, but I wouldn't discount Drake London also in that spot, because remember, the Eagles have put a lot of emphasis this offseason on getting that natural X receiver, that big body wide receiver. They obviously, Treylon Burks is another guy who kind of fits that. They tried to make a run at Allen Robinson, who's a big body X wide receiver. So Garrett Wilson can certainly play the X, and he's so talented that if he's on the board, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. But I'm sure there'll be a discussion about Drake London at that point as well.
One guy that I'm interested, Daxton Hill is a safety, and he's kind of could be a corner. He does a lot. Would he be in play in your mind with 18?
I don't want to slam the door on anything.
I know you're big on them not wanting to take a safety, but this is a guy who has a little versatility.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of a chess piece, right? Because he can play nickel cornerback, but you have Avonte Maddox signed to a long-term contract. So how much slot corner are you really going to use Daxton Hill in? I mean, if you think he can play safety and then come down and be your second interior receiver when they go 4 wide, and he's going to play 65% of your defense, he's certainly worthy of a discussion. But then that goes back to still he's when you slice it up, he's still a safety, right? Whether he's an interior corner or a post player, he's a safety. And if you're talking about the first round with the Eagles this year, I think you're talking about either defensive pass rusher, wide receiver, or cornerback. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Could they, if there's a huge run on all 3 of those, and they're picking at 15 and Linderbaum's on the board, maybe they consider, because we know they like offensive linemen. But I'm going to kind of say that's not the case.
If one of those linemen, Cross, Neal, somehow, some way fell to 15, would they feel compelled?
I mean, if Evan Neal falls to 15, there's something. Probably it's like a Laramie Tunsil type thing. Like he got caught doing something strange about an hour before the draft.
Agree. I'm just like the mindset of this guy's just too good to pass up. Like what guys at 15 that you don't envision being there that could be there, and they're like, I just have to take this guy. It's not a quarterback though, right?
Yeah, Neal, yes. I think that you just run to the podium and say thank you for Evan Neal. But I wouldn't say that about Charles Cross. He's a polarizing type of prospect. Some teams love him. Some teams think the feet and the hands don't always match up, like a little bit more developmental there. So I don't know that the Eagles jump on that unless they think he can play some guard and then move to tackle. But I really, Mike, really feel strongly on defensive line, cornerback, wide receiver.
All right. Check out InsideTheBirds.com for their full mock draft. Adam, Jeff, and Andrew DeCecco made the picks. They alternated. You got both Eagles picks, by the way. Check out who Jeff.
I didn't set it up that way, by the way, I swear. Although we did it communally. If you listen, we all kind of banter it out and then decide as one. It's just that whoever has the pick can settle a tie there.
Gotcha. All right. Well, you can check that out on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel. And it's in written form over at InsideTheBirds.com if you want to read through their mock draft. We will discuss a little bit more draft stuff, of course, football at 4 tomorrow. Andrew will be here on Thursday, as he'll be here on the big draft day. And then Adam's back Friday to recap round number 1 and preview round number 2 and 3 on Friday. Geoff Mosher, we'll talk to you next week, man.
All right, Mike. Talk to you.
All right, Geoff Mosher here on the Sports Bash Live. Football at 4.